This has gotten very serious for something that's just gaming. So let's keep charging on.
Over the coming months, the team would release patch after patch for 1.0. 1.17 introduced 8-player parties and more stable network infrastructure. 1.18 dropped in June 2011 and was a huge patch that made the game much more playable. Level caps lowered for story quests. It added grand companies, class adjustments, instance dungeons, and auto attack. Yes, would you believe this game still didn't have auto attack? It featured a more user-friendly map interface and also scrapped the controversial fatigue system.
And so we need to take this concept that Yoshida-san has created, make it fit with the current world, write stories around it, make the transition seem seamless, and then in the new world, make it so that there's still some connection with that old world that will be understood by those core players, but won't alienate new players. It won't be something like, oh, you didn't play that old, the stuff in 1.0, so you're going to be completely lost, because we don't want to do that either. We want to get...
That's actually a mentality they still carry forward to this day. I mean, scrapping the fatigue system, we have the rested experience system, and those achieve the same goal, right? The goal is that you don't want players who play all the time to pull so impossibly far ahead that players who can't play all the time or are new to the game feel they can't catch up. But there's something different about a positive for the new players than a negative for the veteran players. And so we still see that today. Going into Shadowbringers, which is after this was filmed, Yoshida actually said, we wrote this narrative being aware that there are people in the game who have skipped story this far, have come back to the game and don't remember story, or are brand new and feel overwhelmed and want to buy skip potions, right? They're aware of that. And as a result, one of the things he actually said was that they did not want you to feel that you had to have story to enjoy Shadowbringers. Up until then, I really feel that to enjoy Heavensward and Stormblood narratively, you need to have played cumulatively everything as you went. But Shadowbringers was designed to be different. Shadowbringers was designed to be enjoyable, even for people that didn't know previous story. And now, obviously, that means the people who did, they want to have something for them too, which means those people get to enjoy something extra, something deeper. But that doesn't necessarily mean better when you're talking about the core word of, is a game fun? Just fun, yes or no? Fun. And can a game be fun and be rewarding without all of that you weren't here? And so as somebody that was a longtime story skipper, Shadowbringers was a really big invitation to me. And I remember it feeling very special when you talk about the fact that it was such a stark contrast with how much of the community treated me. It was such a stark contrast with how narratively I was this leper within the community. That I'd been told, even to this day, that enjoying Shadowbringers first and then going back to replay the game is wrong. And that I am less than. And that's not what the devs did. And with Endwalker, they've said once again, as long as you're having fun, you're doing it right. Now, obviously, to have the most deep understanding version, to catch everything, you're going to want to be as caught up as possible. And that means not only the mandatory stories, but all of the optional side stories. Things like raids, Hildebrand, class quests, optional side quests, beast tribes. These things are all going to be referenced because this is a finale for all of the content. And so as a finale, but can it be enjoyable as a game without those things? Absolutely. Absolutely it can. And I think that's something that's very clear from the devs. And it's a lot like watching, professional sports and finding out that those athletes go on vacation with each other's families, and that outside of that, the coaches and the staff and the players are working with local schools and things like that to spread the love and the knowledge of that sport. When I was a kid, I got a chance to go to a basketball camp, and some current playing members of the Dallas basketball team, the Dallas Mavericks, came and spent a day with us playing basketball. And Dirk Nowinski, when I was in high school, came and took my German class to a basketball game and spoke German to us. And so, it wasn't about a rivalry. It was about inviting people in. And being at a basketball game with Dirk was so cool. Now, I will say unfortunately, I was only a German 2 student at the time, and the one unfortunate thing about that was that he had a rule where you were only allowed to speak German to him, and so I didn't get to ask him anything too meaningful because my command of German was pretty limited. So, there's these moments where a lot of times we get it in our head that it's us versus them, that Final Fantasy should hate World of Warcraft and World of Warcraft should hate Final Fantasy, and that the veteran players should tell the new players how to do it correctly. But when you actually reach out to the people leading this charge, when you reach out and you listen to Naoki Yoshida or Koji here talk, they're just excited for people to get into the game. They're just excited for people to like games, period. They have respect for other titles, they have respect for other companies, other devs, and they have respect for players' journeys, even if it's different than theirs. And I think that that's constantly hit on. And to see it hit on right here in this documentary is a real reminder of how we should feel going into events that took place after this was filmed.
New players to come that didn't play the original one, and we don't want to have them have to play the original to understand this one. And so trying to work the story that way was, it was challenging, but it was a lot of fun. We got to try a lot of things. We had a lot of freedom, then especially on the 1.x stuff, because in a sense, it would only be released, seen for a few months, and then it would be gone forever. And so on one hand, that's really exciting because we can do whatever we want. We can create these crazy stories, have these crazy characters, all of these crazy, in all these crazy situations, and go, you know, balls to the wall. But on the other hand, we're working day and night on something that only a few thousand people are going to see and will be gone in 6 months. I really think, I mean, I look back at it now, I think we did a lot of our best work during that one point. And it's sad that no one is ever going to see that. Maybe, you know, there's some videos up on YouTube where people can still go back and check them out. But a lot of, you know, some of the best stories, some of the most crazy stuff went on during that 1.x period because it was pretty much no holds barred. Anything can happen.
I mean, maybe. I think that there's some lasting impact in that they got a chance to discover what their true identity was creatively in a really free state. And so I think there's a lot of things that they learned there that they would not have been able to implement directly into 2.0 or beyond because they would have been fearful of what if it was wrong, what if it caused damage. But because it was being deleted, it gave them a chance to just let it rip. And I think there's something really nice about just letting loose like that. And knowing it was going to be deleted, I think gave them a lot of freedom, you know, that he's describing. And so, like, yeah, it's a bummer that it ended, but the fact that it ended is also what made it possible.
You had like crazy cults, and you had like, you know, people from the Garlean Empire. There was like propaganda, giant dragons and machines, and it was just anything goes in a type of situation there, and it was just really a lot of fun.
1.19 signified the 1-year anniversary. Players finally got personal chocobos, and in the distance, one light in the night sky burnt slightly brighter, a sign of things to come.
At the very first time, it was just some rumor between players. Oh, is it getting bigger? No, I don't think so.
This was also when Square Enix announced that an entirely new version of the game had been in development since January, and that current players would receive copies of it for free. They also announced that players' character data and progress would be transferred to this new version, what they were then calling version 2.0. A roadmap for patches was outlined, and it was announced that monthly fees would be reinstated as of January 2012. As an incentive for players to keep playing while the fees were introduced, they announced Legacy Campaign, which rewarded players who paid for at least 3 months of service with permanently reduced monthly fees. Those players would also get an exclusive Chocobo mount, while as a thank you for their support during the redevelopment, their names would be featured in the credits of the new game.
で、2011年10月14日にそのレルムリボーンっていう14を全く新しいゲームとして作り直してますっていう発表を同時にすることで、どうなる？このままアップデートしていくんじゃないの？一体どうなるのこの先？楽しかったですよ。
1.2 was the final patch of 2011. It saw all the servers renamed, while the moon Dalamud now seemed larger in the sky. 1.21 came in March 2012, introducing a new job system and 2 new dungeons. 1.22 followed in April. Dalamud grew closer, and now some players are beginning to have nightmares. Ominous dreams greet players who log into the game while at an inn. The community all the while trying to figure this out. Is the moon going to destroy the world? Then how will player data be saved in 2.0? They wouldn't have to wait long for answers. That summer, a trailer revealed that 2.0 would be titled A Realm Reborn, and Yoshida-san conducted numerous interviews explaining the future of the game and the features players can expect. On September 12, 2012, the final patch for 1.0 was released. The game updates to 1.23b, and with it comes an enormous Dalamud, its mechanical outer shell now in full view. Players now realizing that this world didn't have long left. On November 1st, 2012, a final...
This was the point where Brian had been begging me to play the game with him, and honestly, it felt too late to join. Really, really cool. I am really happy for those that got to be here. I don't want them to ever redo it. Yoshida's been asked over and over and over, will they ever redo these events? I think having this be something that was very of its time, that was that moment that they get to cherish as their memories, I don't ever want that taken away. These are players that supported a game through what Yoshida has now recently gone back and called an unprecedented disaster. I think letting this be that moment, letting this thank them for living through the gaming equivalent of a tragedy, letting them live through that, I think is really, really neat. And I don't ever want them to redo this. I think letting 1.0 players have this in addition to a couple bucks off their sub every month and tattoos for their character or whatever, I think is really cool. It's very rare that game companies get to do something like this. World of Warcraft sent out statues to everybody at the 10-year anniversary that had been subscribed every month since it first. They pulled a player list of everybody who'd stayed subscribed for 10 years continuous, and they mailed them a statue. And there were people who were like, well, I unsubscribed one time 5 years in. If I'd known there was going to be a statue. It wasn't about knowing. The goal wasn't to reward players for supporting a game because they thought they were getting a reward. The reward was there to say thank you to players who were taking part in this through the good and the bad, not knowing, right? That they were here just to support it because they cared for it, not to thank somebody because they thought that they would get something. To thank somebody specifically who had supported the game to a level that made you question. And I think that's really, really neat. Of course, that is a bummer for people that missed these various rewards by a month or 2 months, but the line has to be drawn somewhere, and I think that it's really, really cool that people got that.
In-game battle began. Square Enix made entry free for the final week of the game, while a haunting song can be heard playing on the wind across the entire realm. While the server struggled to deal with the load, players got together with their friends one last time, as the development team in Japan spammed enemies outside capital cities. One group of players outside of Golda has become legendary, attempting to protect the city with what we now call the Great Gobu Wall.
Right before Dalamud hit Elzir, we had to do some chaotic situation to the existing world. So what we decided to do is to spawn the strong enemies at the near the main cities. Even when I popped the very strong, Manticore or the Mobile or the giant monsters, players kill instantly. Right. Yeah, instantly. Yeah, just snap. So, oh Jesus! So you killed my monster again. So what we can do is just keep spawning the lots of monsters, and then.
I remember Brian updating me on this like every time I talk to him. Super cool.
In very late night, when I was doing, keep spawning the monsters. The one programmer I've never talked to him before, but just coming down to my desk and then just give me a bit of paper with some numbers, which numbers I can understand. This is the number of the certain monster.
Okay.
I can type in so that I can spawn a very new, stronger monsters. Right. Oh, thank you very much. It's a program. So that was a very fun moment.
You were like playing God.
At first, I felt like God. Hey, players, can you beat my monsters? But no. I was very weak God.
They were God.
Yeah, they were God.
So it was then, on Sunday, November 11th, 2012, just over a year after Final Fantasy XIV was originally launched, with Dalamud hanging in the sky, that the servers were finally turned off. And as they did, a trailer dropped, showing players what was to become of their old home.
Well, it's pretty simple. You had something that not a lot of people liked, and everyone wanted to forget about it. So rather than, just taking that and doing it over, and just reimagining it, why not destroy that and start over? If we leave too much of that original core there, then it will just linger on as that kind of cancer that, will always bring us back to that failure. Why not just clean the slate? But on the other hand, and this is where, things kind of got complicated, is that, no matter how bad the reviews were and how many people bought the game but then left the game, there was still this core of players in both Japan and, Europe, North America, that were passionate about the game. In the state that it was, they were passionate about the game. They were passionate about the series and their characters that they had created and were now living in this MMO. And so, it would have been easy to just say, okay, bye guys, But if you do that, then you've basically alienated the only group that stuck with you, for all of those, when everyone else is slamming the game and talking about how bad it is. Those guys were troopers. They would go on the forums. They were defending, the development team when a lot of times we didn't deserve defending. So that idea to wipe the slate clean, but not make it something completely new, make it something that was connected in some way to that, to the old game. The decision made by Yoshida-san to, okay, let's bring down Dalamud, destroy the planet, destroy the realm, but then bring it back.
It also gave the game a chance to be a fond memory. There are times in your life that sucked, but when you look back, because of relationships that were formed during that time, because of skills that you gained during that time, because those times led to opportunities that maybe were really positive memories, you can look back on what was ultimately something that really sucked when you were there, as a fond memory, right? And it allows nostalgia to kind of cover up its flaws. So by making this really epic thing, they got a chance to kind of rewrite history.
Figuring out a way to make that happen within the current story. Make it feel natural, make it feel like that was always the plan, was the biggest challenge, I think.
The team at Square Enix had worked themselves to the bone, not only recreating Final Fantasy XIV in A Realm Reborn, but also by dedicating time and money to ensuring that 1.0 players felt part of that story. The moon, Dalamud, had crashed into the world of Eorzea. That world was gone forever. And only one question remained. What was going to rise out of its ashes?
It's absolutely wild that this took off from there, but I think that seeing us build towards the finale with Endwalker, seeing this next journey that they're just now getting to telling us about in A Realm Reborn, seeing it kind of take the same trajectory, right? That we are now building to the finale of this chapter that is just now beginning. That we're now building towards something new again. I think it's what's going to make Shadowbringers go down as one of the best MMO expansions that many of us ever play. Not because we won't ever play good games again, but because a chance to be there as we go into this finale, going into the Endwalker story, coming out of Shadowbringers, is an opportunity to live in what will likely be a chapter that's really, really meaningful. And to live through something that is hard to repeat. It's not just about it being a good game, it's also the fact that it came out of a time that many of us have used this game to spend time with each other and have fun when the world kind of sucked a little bit. And that it was a great game when other games were struggling. And that even of its own, even if you remove the context of what's going on in gaming and what's going on in the world, that it's a great game that's coming to an end. I think narratively, as we prepare for the next chapter of Final Fantasy XIV, I think is something really special. So it's a good reminder to enjoy Final Fantasy XIV for what it is right now.